are again. It's time for another year, 2021. Are you ready for another story? I've got my story bag. Here it is. Oops. Here it is here. It's my bag with purple circles and golden elephants and blue circles with golden elephants and red circles. Do you think Peter's ready? He had such a good Christmas. I think he did. How are you, Peter? Yes, we're back again. You ready to say hello? Hello, everybody. Oops. Hello, everybody. Yes, there's lots of things to do. You want to read books? Look at all the books behind me. The Folk of the Faraway Tree, The Magic Faraway Tree, Adventures of the Wishing Chair. Yes, we already read that, didn't we? You've got another one. Shall we see what book he's got? Oh, Peter, it's called The Wishing Chair Again. We had the wishing chair for the last book, and this one's got lots of stories in it. He said we'll read one chapter at a time. That's a good way. He wants to go back into his bag and listen. Okay, bye-bye, Peter. Bye-bye. Put him into his bag. The Wishing Chair Again. Oh, I can't read. Put on your glasses, Grandma. Now I can read. In the front it says, To Vivian, Merry Christmas from Auntie Marion. Auntie Marion gave this book to your mummy when your mummy was only 6. Now it's time for us to read it to you. Chapter 1. Home for the Holidays. Some children go away to school and they live at the school and then they come home for the holidays. Aren't you lucky you can live at home all the time? Let's read this story. Home for the Holidays. Mollie and Peter had just arrived home for the holidays. Their schools had broken up on the same day, which was very lucky, and Mother had met them at the station. They had to catch a train and then live at the school. Wow. They hugged her hard. Mother, it's grand to see you again. How's everyone? Fine, said Mother. The garden's looking lovely. Your bedrooms are all ready for you, and your playroom at the bottom of the garden is longing for you to go there and play as usual. Two children looked at one another. They had a big secret, one that they couldn't possibly mention even in their letters to one another at school. They were longing to talk about it now. Can we just pop down to our playroom first? Asked Peter when they got home. Oh no, dear, said Mother. You must come upstairs and wash and help me to unpack your things. You will have plenty of time to spend in your playroom these holidays. The children's secret was in their playroom, and they so badly wanted to see it again. They went upstairs and washed, and then went down for tea. Can we go to our playroom after we've helped you unpack? Asked Peter. Mother laughed. Very well. Leave me to unpack and go along. I expect you want to see if I've given away any of your things. Well, I haven't. I never do that without asking you. After tea, Peter spoke to Mollie in a low voice. Mollie, do you think Chinky would be down in our playroom waiting for us with the wishing chair? I do hope so, said Mollie. Oh, Peter, it was dreadful trying to keep our secret all the term long and never saying anything about it to anyone. Well, it's such a marvellous secret. It's worth keeping well, said Peter. Do you remember when we first got the wishing chair, Mollie? Oh, yes, said Mollie. We went to a funny little shop that sold old things to get something for Mother's birthday. And we saw heaps of queer enchanted things there. And we were frightened and huddled together on an old chair. And we wished we were safe back at home, said Peter. And hey presto, the chair grew little red wings on its legs and flew out of a window with us and took us back to our playroom. And yes, it wouldn't go back to the shop even when we commanded it to, said Mollie. So we had to keep it, our very own wishing chair. And do you remember how we went off in it again and came to a castle where there was a giant who kept a little servant called Chinky, said Peter. And we rescued him and took him home in the wishing chair with us. Oh, that was lovely, said Mollie. And after that, Chinky lived down in our playroom and looked after the chair for us and told us when it grew its wings so that we could fly off in it together again and have wonderful adventures, said Peter. And then we had to go to school and leave it. But it didn't matter really, because Chinky took the chair home to his mother's cottage and lived with her and took care of it for us, said Mollie. And he said he'd come back as soon as we came home from holidays and bring the chair with him so that we could go adventuring again, finished Peter. If only Mother knew that's the reason we want to get down to the playroom, to see if Chinky is there and to see the dear old wishing chair again. Peter found the key. Come on, Mollie, let's go and see all our toys again. And the wishing chair, said Mollie in a whisper, and Chinky. They rushed downstairs and out into the garden. It was the end of July and the garden was full of flowers, and it was lovely to be home. No more lessons for weeks. They raced down to the playroom, which had a really big airy shed at the bottom of the garden. Peter slid the key into the lock. Chinky, he called, are you here? He unlocked the door. The children went into the playroom and looked around. It was a nice room with a big rug on the floor and shelves for books and toys, a cot with Mollie's old dolls in it, and a large doll's house in the corner. But there was no wishing chair and no Chinky the pixie. The children stared around in dismay. He's not here, said Peter. He said he would come today with a chair. I gave him the date and he wrote it down in his notebook. Oh, I hope he's not ill, said Mollie. And they looked all around the playroom, set the musical box going, and they opened the windows. They felt disappointed. They had so looked forward to seeing Chinky and to sitting once more in the wishing chair. Suddenly, a little face looked in the door. Mollie gave a shout. Chinky, it's you! We were so worried about you. We hoped you'd be here. Both the children gave the little pixie a hug. Chinky grinned.
Well, how could I be here waiting for you if the door was locked and the windows fastened? Silly. I may be a pixie, but I can't fly through locked doors. And I have missed you. Were you very bored at school?
Oh no, said Peter. Boarding school is simply lovely. We both love it, but we're jolly glad to be home again. Chinky, where's the wishing chair? Asked Mollie anxiously. Nothing's happened to it, has it? Have you got it with you?
Well, I bought it here this morning,
said Chinky.
but when I found the door of the playroom locked and I couldn't get in, I hid it under the hedge at the bottom of the garden. But you'd be surprised how many people nearly found it.
But nobody goes to the bottom of the garden, said Peter.
Oh, don't they?
Said Chinky.
Well, first of all, your gardener thought he'd cut the hedge here today. And I had an awful job dragging the chair from one hiding place to another. And then an old gypsy woman came by, and she almost saw it. But I barked like a dog, and she ran away.
The children laughed. Poor old Chinky. You must have been glad when we got here at last. Let's go and get it, said Peter. I'm hoping to sit in it again. Has it grown its wings much since we left it with you, Chinky?
Not once, said Chinky. Funny, isn't it? It's just stood in my mother's kitchen like any ordinary chair and never grown even one red wing. I think it was waiting for you to come back.
Oh, I hope it was, because it may grow its wings heaps of times, said Peter, and we'll go off on lots of adventures. They went to the hedge. There it is, said Mollie in excitement. I can see one of its legs sticking out. They dragged out the old chair. Just the same, said Peter in delight. And how well you've kept it, Chinky. It's polished so brightly.
Ah, my mother did that,
said Chinky.
She said such a wonderful chair should have a wonderful polish. And she was at it every day. Rub, 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 until the chair groaned.
Peter carried the chair back to the playroom. Chinky went in front to make sure there was nobody looking. They didn't want any questions asked about why the chair was hidden in the hedge. They set it down in its old place in the playroom, and then they all climbed into it. It's just the same, said Peter. We feel a bit more squashed than usual because Mollie and I seem to have grown when at school. But you haven't grown, Chinky.
No, I shan't grow any more,
said Chinky. Don't you wish the chair would grow its wings and go flapping off somewhere with us right now? Oh, yes, said Mollie. Chair, do grow your wings, just to please us, even if it's only to take us a little way up into the air and back. But the chair didn't. The children looked anxiously down at its legs to see if the red buds were forming that sprouted into wings. But there was nothing there.
It's no good,
said Chinky.
It won't grow its wings just because it's asked. It can be very obstinate, you know. All I hope is that it hasn't forgotten how to grow its wings after being still so long. I shouldn't like its magic to fade away. That was a dreadful thought. The children patted the arms of the chair. Dear wishing chair, you haven't forgotten to grow your wings, have you? The chair gave a remarkable creak, a very long one. Everyone laughed. It's all right, said Chinky. That's its way of telling us it hasn't forgotten. A creak is the only voice it's got. Mother came down the garden. Children, Daddy's home,
He wants to see you. Right, called back Peter. He turned to Chinky. See you tomorrow, Chinky. You can cuddle up on the old sofa as usual, with a rug and the cushion for the night. You'll live in the playroom, won't you, as you did before, and tell us when the chair grows its wings.
Yes, I should like to live here once more,
said Chinky. The children ran back to the house. They had a very nice evening indeed, telling their parents everything that happened to them in the term of school. Then off they went to bed, glad to be in their dear old rooms again. But they hadn't been sleeping very long before Peter began to dream that he was a rat being shaken by a dog. It was a very unpleasant dream, and he woke up with a jump. It was Chinky shaking him by the arm.
Wake up!
Whispered the pixie.
The chair's grown its wings already. If you want an adventure, hurry up.
Well, what a thrill! Peter woke Mollie and they pulled on their clothes very quickly and ran down the garden. They heard loud flapping noise as they reached the playroom shed.
It's the chair's wings, panted Chinky. Come on, we'll just sit in it, just before it goes.
There they are, running back in the night. And that's the end of chapter 1. What a way to remember the first book. And now Peter and Mollie are back home, and Chinky's back home, and the wishing chair's back home. And it's night time. And the chair's grown its wings. Come back tomorrow. We'll have to see where the first adventure is. Bye-bye.